We are live from the PMC studios at the corner of 5th Ave and 41st Street, and we are here to talk hockey, team valuations with the expert, Kevin Weeks, in studio to give us his take on what's going on right now with the business of hockey.
Too kind. Thank
Kevin,
you.
welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. This is, first of all, this space, this studio is absolutely fire. Love it. Love it. What a location. Love the building. This is great, guys. And thanks for finally inviting me. I don't know what it took to get the invite, but I'm pumped to be here. Thank you.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming in
My
studio.
pleasure.
NHL, you've been in the business a long time. You've seen a lot.
Yeah.
Where we are right now, things are pretty good. Things are pretty good. When you look at this, average team value, $1.79 billion, up 37%. No surprise who's number one, probably.
True.
Your hometown team.
True. Yeah, no surprise. No surprise that they're number one. They have a complete enterprise going on up there. They've had so much success, regular season, incredible. Really exciting players, dynamic players. Austin Matthews, American-born, the best goal scorer on the planet right now. Just a dynamic team offensively. And, of course, they have just all that star power in their group. Now, the big thing for them will be to translate some of that regular season success into postseason. And then you should check their evaluation. Like, if they go on a playoff run, check their evaluation after that.
Well, that's what we talk about that with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, these franchises that have been sitting at the top of the financial table for a long time without success in the postseason. I mean, it's been Maple Leafs 1967.
67.
There we go. Longest Stanley Cup drought
Yeah.
in the history of the sport.
It's wild.
But still, highest regular season revenues
Yes.
everywhere. They print money
They
at
do.
that building. And we just had a big valuation number put on it because Rogers is buying out BCE.
That's right.
$9 billion transaction for the Leafs, Maple Leafs, and the MLS, as Leafs, Raptors, and the MLS club. So that's what we've seen here, which is incredible. Some of these valuations are up because we've had big transaction in Tampa.
Yes. Just
$1.8
there.
billion. So much going on down in Tampa. I mean, Jeff Innick, someone told me it should be a Harvard Business School case study
Yes.
for what he did in Tampa. Take me through what you saw in Tampa.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. We were speaking off camera, you and I, and having played in Tampa and seeing where it is now from then. And, I was there in its initial time after it, just in the early stages of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then, of course, seeing it through the lens of being a visiting player to then starting broadcasting to then when Mr. Vinnick took over and everything that he's done since he took over. Very aggressive in terms of his investment, invested in a lot of the land, did a lot of development, a lot of real estate, a lot of infrastructure, capital improvement to the building, big investment there, investing in the community, which a lot of people don't realize. And quite frankly, you look at what he grew that into, basically a $2 billion asset, which is incredible. But that entire footprint in and around Amalie Arena, including Amalie Arena as the anchor, but that entire footprint is now world-class. Like, I couldn't believe it yesterday walking around and looking around pregame in the morning, even pregame skate, and then postgame outside. It's just amazing. Channel side, the riverside, everything. He has been transformational there, and for our league too.
Well, and I think you see a lot of other owners are looking at that. They look at what's happened in Tampa. They look at the mixed-use development in Edmonton.
Yes.
And so now other teams want to replicate that model because they see it's an incredible cash flow business.
Big time.
If you can make it work from the real estate side.
Absolutely. I have somebody else from our family in this room that's smarter than I am off camera, and she's from Alberta. So nice that you mentioned Edmonton. But all of that to say, we use that as a case study because she was involved with them in their initial planning of that entire project before we moved back here to New York area. But that's also kind of supercharged the league in a different way. And I dare say it's one of the top 3, top 4 buildings and venues in the league and one of the top 4, I would say, arenas in the world. It's unbelievable what they built there and the entire surrounding area, the JW Marriott, everything they have going on. And now, if you look at where they've gone in terms of the valuations, to now they're north of $2 billion. That's really impressive for an Edmonton team. And that arena has become the beacon, I think, for the Western. Really, it's the best in Canada for sure, even including Toronto, as far as the venue goes. But it's one of the best in the world on top of that.
Yeah, it's incredible. We have him $2.4 billion, ranked 7th overall, pushing up against the Chicago Blackhawks, LA Kings just behind him. The Kings are up there because the Staples Center
Correct.
is just a money-making
Yep.
machine for
Yep.
AEG.
Mm-hmm.
And Edmonton is poised, had the Stanley Cup run last year.
It was unreal.
Which was incredible.
It
and
was
the
unreal.
revenue it generated, grossed over $100 million in ticket revenue.
Yes.
Now the NHL gets a slice of that.
Sure.
But they're set up pretty nicely with those two superstars who are probably going to be playing there for a long time.
They are. They are. When you have those franchise pieces like those two guys, obviously the great Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, German engineering, as I call him, German-born and bred. But when you look at that team, Evan Bouchard on the back end, they're an exciting team to watch play. The venue is absolutely incredible. The in-game experience is among the best I've seen. Literally, I've done about 5 playoff games, not including the Stanley Cup final, prior to the Stanley Cup final there in the last 2 years. And I came back and said to my wife, Meg, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable up there in Edmonton what they're doing. I'm telling you. She knows it. She's smiling over there. You can't see. But all of that to say, then the Stanley Cup came, and they blew it off. Like, they blew the roof off the hinges of the building. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. The vibes, everything. In-game, everybody was going up there. And by the way, that was the most traveled, longest distance traveled for a Stanley Cup final in NHL history between South Florida with the Panthers and up in Edmonton.
Right.
Nobody was complaining because both venues were uniquely cool, but everybody was blown away by what was happening in Edmonton.
Yeah, I want to hear what you think about these Sun Belt franchises, because for a long time, the narrative was, doesn't work
Sure.
work in the Sun Belt. Now you look around, you see the Tampa transaction,
Yes.
see the success of Florida, see the Dallas Stars. Again, taking care of the problem in Arizona.
Sure.
I've moved to Utah.
Yeah.
But right now, you look around the Sun Belt, things are pretty good on and off the ice.
For sure. And I love that you highlighted that, because that for the longest time has been kind of a bit of a rub for the commissioner and for other people involved, and for me specifically because I played for those teams.
Right.
So I know firsthand what it is to play. The Florida Panthers drafted me. I'll always be indebted to them and grateful to them. I was their second draft choice ever in 1993. So seeing what that was like there to what it's become, same with Carolina. Carolina was also transformed. The year we went to the Stanley Cup final in 2002 against Detroit, we had fans tailgating. That was a new thing in the NHL. That had never happened before. So visiting teams were coming up in the playoffs, and they're like, oh my gosh, all the Caniacs are out at 10-something in the morning. Literally in the parking lot. The game wasn't until 7 or 7:30 p.m. So, and then you layer in the Lightning, of course, with their success. Dallas, as you referenced. In short, every one of the Sun Belt teams, with the exception of Arizona, but then if you want to even go with the California teams and Vegas, every single one of those teams, save for Arizona, has been to or won a Stanley Cup final or been to multiple.
Yeah.
So let's revert to what you said initially. Sorry for any of the Leafs fans out there. They haven't won one in an original 6 markets since 1967. So really, the success case for a lot of those markets is proof positive of now great ownership, successful clubs, and really fans that are very passionate about their respective teams.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about the cap for a second,
Sure.
because it's something that bankers point out as one of the biggest positives to owning an NHL team, because it's really a hard cap. Now, I know fans grumble because it hasn't gone up very much.
Yes.
But we will see it accelerate. It's
sure.
been kind of we've had a trade-off, really, what's happening now. We don't have the big escrows that drove
That's paid off now.
that drove players crazy when
Yep.
they had 18% of their 16% of their salaries kept each year. But right now, what do you see from inside in terms of the relationship between the league and the CBA, with the players union, which seems to be stronger than ever in terms of them working together?
It seems to be harmonious. I mean, we're at a different time in the world too, certainly than earlier in my playing career and some of the other work stoppages, to like the midpoint, to even when I first started broadcasting 15 years ago to now. It's now gotten to the point to where it seems to be relatively harmonious between the two, which ultimately is good for the business. They realize, in a sense, there is a quasi-partnership. It's not a full partnership, but it's a quasi-partnership. And ultimately, rising tide floats all boats. And we're starting to see now, with the increase in the franchise values and the increase in the business and the revenue for the league up to $7.5 billion, all of that has been good for everybody. In a lot of cases, the cap has really strengthened some of the clubs that may have needed that strength at times. I think a lot of people forget, prior to Edmonton getting their new building, if you can imagine all the legacy players and the greatest, Wayne Gretzky, Mess, Grant Fuhr, Paul Coffey, and all the greats, Yari Curry, that played there. into Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, and them now, there was a chance that they were going to move if they didn't get that new building.
Right.
So now the salary cap has kind of helped them navigate some of the turbulence that they had, and not unique to them. Same for some of the other clubs as well. So ultimately, league revenues now are in a really good place. They're going to continue increasing. And to tether it back to one of your other points, when you talk about some of the bankers, but from some of the investment bankers as well and people in ownership, it's a very attractive ownership proposition because of the cap, and also because of the fact that on a comparative basis to the other sports, the NHL is one of the best values on the street. I'd say the NHL and MLS soccer right now.
Yeah, no, 100%, because you're getting in. So maybe you don't have the big TV contract, national TV deal that you do in the NFL or NBA, but you're still capturing the same local economics.
For sure.
You're still putting on the same concerts. You're still able to generate incredible ticket revenue because capacity in these buildings, 95% plus basically in almost every single arena.
Absolutely.
Throughout the league.
You're right. And the attendance has been great league-wide. And here's the other thing, too, if you on a comparative basis of the salaries. So if you now look at what Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or Leon Draisaitl's new deal in Edmonton, for example, and you compare that to your top NBA player or one of your top players. I don't know. Let's take Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, for example, because I like Ant-Man. But let's take him as an example, right? Or if you look at even the great Patrick Mahomes in KC, just the economics in terms of the player salaries are very different. So that also makes it, with that delta, that also makes it more attractive to investors, and we're starting to see a lot more interest. There's a ton of interest, and you guys know this as well as I do, you and Scott and the whole team. There's a ton of interest that's always expressed to Commissioner, but I feel like that's even at a higher level now because it's a more attractive proposition. We do have the 2 TV deals now between the TNT family and, of course, us on Disney, ESPN, which helps the credibility.
Yeah.
And his phone is ringing off the hook right now.
We've seen a bunch of team transactions over the last 13 months, but I want to go back to the one that really started this, and I know opened a lot of people's eyes because it was a team that was struggling, bottom of the financial table. Ottawa Senators sold for almost $1 billion, and I think that people were like, whoa, what's going on here? What was your reaction when you saw that?
Yeah, and that was a really unique case because I knew the late owner, Eugene Melnick, very well. Toronto guy, and he lived in Barbados, and you know my parents are Bajan, so I got to know him quite well. We had a good relationship. Unfortunately, he passed, and then of course it was willed to his daughter. So it was kind of a unique time in that sale transaction. Of course, a sensitive one, but ultimately, once you started seeing the numbers, and a lot of the projections were in and around them getting a new arena at the LeBreton Flats project, right in downtown Ottawa, and that has not come to pass yet. But nonetheless, it was a very active process through a lot of different bids, a lot of different groups that had placed their bids. And ultimately, when that sold for $1 billion, people were like, whoa, like different owners in the league that I speak to, different people in the league, other people of influence, they're like, wow, there's no way we thought we would get $1 billion for that. And ultimately, in that transaction, as we know, rising tide floats all boats. So that kind of turbocharged, if you will, the marketplace as far as valuations, as you know. And that kind of coincided with this interest that we're seeing now.
Yeah, well, 100%. You bring up the potential in Ottawa, and we're seeing that in buildings around the NHL where there's opportunity, whether it's renovating your building, mixed-use development around it. We've seen success in Edmonton, LA Live out in LA, Tampa, what they've done. I've talked to people. Carolina's in the process of doing big renovation, multi-$100 million renovation, and then Nashville too. I know has big plans. What are you seeing in Nashville?
Yeah, I had a great chat with some people from Nashville yesterday, and Sean Henry from their group specifically in here in the Lincoln Tunnel on the way in today, and he was kind enough to kind of share what they're working on. It's very ambitious. And ultimately, they want to add 4 acres in and around Bridgestone Arena. And the way their arena's pitched, there's an extra like 40 feet at some points in the arena, underground, like subterranean, that they'll be able to access. But in general, they're going to do a complete mixed use, 2 hotel towers, tons of residential, tons of commercial. And he says ultimately they envision it having the world's largest rooftop deck, which it's right on Broadway to begin with. So opposite Broadway, for those of you that have been in Nashville, I'll be there tomorrow. I have their game for ESPN on Thursday. But opposite the arena across the street, they've already had a phase of that completed, and now they're going to really just transform all of Broadway with this. So if you think of basically indoor, outdoor, all of the different events that are now happening in Nashville.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Titans are now in the midst of a $2 billion stadium of their own down to the other end to kind of bookend what the Predators are doing. So this will be really interesting. They've started a new sports and entertainment group as well under the new ownership. They're very ambitious. They're very committed to enhancing the experience for the fans and the players and corporate partners. So he was really geeked about it. I asked him if there was a number, and he said, well, going in, we always have a number, but maybe it'll be between, 3/4, 750 to say $1 billion as of now. So that's really cool.
They always go over.
They always go. That's what happened here with the Garden.
They don't put out a number.
That's what happened at the Garden. Totally. That's what happened at the Garden, right? Remember when they were going to do just prior to the rental, it was supposed to be like 650, and we know that went very well north of $1 billion.
Yeah, $1 billion.
Yeah.
New York Rangers reaping the rewards of it. Number 2 on our list. $3.25 billion.
Huge.
Incredible what's going on there right now. But yeah, new ownership.
Yeah.
Former governor came in and bought it over a multi-year period. He's now the control owner down there, and certainly big ambitions in a very hot city, sports-wise and across the board.
Destination. Just talking to them yesterday at Amalie Arena because they played the Lightning yesterday. I was asking a bunch of questions, and it's become a destination. So now, free agency, trades, kids coming out of NCAA, you name it, everybody is looking at Nashville. Their phone's ringing off the hook. Yeah. It's ringing off the hook. So now they don't have to sell as hard to be able to attract talent both on and off the ice, front office, you name it. They've done a really good job of just kind of transforming that, and that'll continue for sure. But here's something that's also pretty interesting. I'm going to do a little. We talk about that. A huge hat tip to you and your team and Scott and everybody for being able to even come up with these valuations, because that's a lot of information for you to gather. That's big time. And they're not always willing, not everybody's willing to play ball to share, so props to you. But I would say this too. Here's what's interesting is some of these assets, we know they're legacy assets, right? But ultimately, these are the valuation numbers. But could you imagine if one of these legacy assets, let's say the Rangers, say if it was Mr. Dolan who chose to, let's say if it was Chicago Blackhawks or whomever, and if they got to market, even just based on that transaction with the Leafs this year, that would be crazy.
Yeah. Those premium assets, really hard to value. That really do not come up for sale. I mean, the Blackhawks have been in the Wirtz family since the 50s.
Generations.
Yes. And so you have one shot if you want to buy that. And so and you have multiple whales show up at the auction.
Oh yeah.
That's what really drives these auctions.
No doubt. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Excellent.
That's good.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for coming in studio. This is great. I appreciate you sharing your insights on what's happening right now with the business of the NHL.
Thank you. My pleasure. Love it. Thanks for having me. Let's do it again.
Love it.
Thank you.